And who all do we have coming into the Stump the Chump today?
We still got Hannah, Jose, and Tim, and Kevin.
Yeah, no Tiara.
No, but there's a nice little stuffed bear on her bed.
That was for you guys.
You're as bad as me on my desk.
That's the Coda Bear.
Yeah, from Vegas. Come on, Jose, you're letting us down. All right, I can see it now.
I have a
Yeah,
bear.
the
It's not that
invisible
bear. It's a
Coda Bear.
different bear, but it's a bear nevertheless. He's behind my coffee cup. There you go.
All right,
Kevin,
let's
are
go
you
ahead
out
and
there?
start him up,
I
Kelvin.
come prepared.
And Tim, so that you know, I muted you during the break, so you may need to re-unmute. Well, this is going to go real far. Our very first submission was
I love.
Jose.
What I do? Oh, that's funny.
Your Chrome browser extension. That was actually the very first email that came in for the Stump the Chump.
So, I was just sharing that we wrote that extension to make life a little easier when tracing within the browser. So if anybody is used to the classic tracing in Epicor, where you can make calls in the classic screen and then record what the business objects do, the functionality was kind of lost when they went to the browser. The recommendation that they gave was, oh, just go into developer tools and the network tab, which, yes, you can see the calls there, but you also see every other call that the browser makes to anything else: pictures, CSS, JavaScript, WebSockets, you name it, and they come and scroll through like a bat out of hell, and it's kind of hard to keep up and follow with. So I got tired of chasing my tail there. So me and Josh put together a little Chrome extension that basically hijacks the way that Angular makes the web calls. When the extension is enabled, it basically acts as a bridge between Epicor and your server so that it can capture those calls and let you look at them in a nice way. There's a whole demo video on how to use it on Epi Users if you're curious. I've been actually using it myself quite a bit since I put it out. So I've been making fixes and changes to it as I see fit. And if anybody has any ideas of other enhancements I can make to it, throw them out there, and we'll see if we can throw them out there and fix them. But I've been using it quite a bit and quite pleased with the way that it works. So hopefully it helps other people.
Awesome. Hannah, are you using it?
No. Why would I make my life easier?
You did say you were a masochist earlier, or a sadist. I don't remember exactly which one, but I do remember you kind of picked on yourself.
Honestly, it's laziness. He's making me do something. Like I gotta go get a link and download it. Psh.
It doesn't help with App Studio. We did try to go that direction for a little bit, and then I decided that I have a full-time job already, so maybe some other lifetime. But it does work pretty well for tracing the business objects, and it has a feature that somebody requested after we had put it out. Somebody was like, you know, it would be really nice if we could replicate that call in Postman, and so we did that. So you can basically run a trace in Epicor and with a single click replicate the call in Postman to make the same REST call, and then generate your C# or Node or PHP code or whatever you want.
I was going to say, as a professor, don't you get victims? I mean, TAs?
I do actually, you know, but I don't think I'm allowed to abuse them this way.
Awesome. So everybody, this will be in the presentation. We'll send that link out so anybody who wants that can definitely download the extension. Makes it much easier. Okay, Kazu submitted a question also by email. So if they came in by email beforehand, I put the company name on there. With the webinar chat, I don't always know what company people are with, so I just define them as online. But Kazu's over at Nowhere. he's noticed there's quite a few tables that already exist in Epicor for different modules, whether you have access to them or not. And he's questioning if it's bad practice to utilize those tables for the company's own use.
Yes, it's bad practice. Don't do that.
I'm with Tim.
Yes, I'm with Tim. That's a bad idea. You never know what's going to creep into that table.
Yeah. Later on, you might find that you need a field, you decide to buy that module, and then all of a sudden you just corrupted the table. So don't do that.
Got it.
We had an issue before before I took over as the administrators, where if there wasn't a field, like say on the order detail table, that we needed a field for. So, for example, a big one is we didn't have a field for this is a rush order. There was not a checkbox on there already for that. So they just decided, oh, we're not using this other checkbox for anything. Now that checkbox means rush. So I have, or it was a drop down field. So now I have years worth of orders where I know it's a rush order if the marketing event sequence is equal to 2.
That's helpful.
That was pretty unanimous. Thanks for the feedback.
Awesome. Next one for today, Susan Rule over at Lakeshore. Fred, you want to go ahead and describe this one? I'm going to kind of mute myself out in the background here a little.
So Susan says, I need to add the ability to scan serial numbers in the select serial number panel. I created a custom layer and called the layer out in the quantity adjustment window with an event that overrides the call serial numbers entry form target. The goal is to call a custom layer out on every window that uses the select serial number window as a panel that slides out, but I'm trying to get it working in one window first. Our scanner scanned the serial number, then tab, then enter. So in my custom layer, I created scan page with 2 panels. First panel is called scan to create. This would be used when I want to create new serial numbers to adjust into inventory. Panel has a text box with epi binding to snf.serial number and an add button. Then I have an event triggered on the button click of the button that sets focus back to the text box and then calls the event next, new quantity to add, which is an existing event. That works great. I can start in the text box, scan a serial number, scanner tab moves the focus to the button, and the scanner enter clicks the button, which then calls the event to move the focus back to the text box, and so on and so forth, until I've added all my serial numbers and I can manually click the OK button. Tally counts up and shows how many serial numbers I have. The second panel is called Scan to Select, which would be used when I want to select existing serial numbers to adjust out of inventory. It has a text box with epi binding of SNF add serial number and a select button. Created an event triggered on the button click that sets focus back to the text box, but I cannot figure out which event to call next. I have had this working in Classic for years, and I'm using the same epi bindings for my text boxes for the 2 different cases. Also, I cannot preview the select serial numbers custom layer by itself. I have to test it by using the quantity adjustment window. Any ideas? Ultimately, she's looking for what is that event for the second scan to select.
So the best way to do that is to open up DevTools and enable debugging and run through it manually. The problem I'm seeing is it's on a slide out panel, which means you can't really enable debugging on that panel alone. There is a sysconfig file setting where you can enable it debugging globally. That way it's turned on across the board. You can open your panel and then you can manually run through it and find that specific event. I will have to get that config thing for you.
Okay.
I'll pop it in the chat.
Awesome.
I can also say, I can say with a safe harbor statement that we are reanalyzing how that whole serial number selection process works in core code because we're not happy with the way it works, and the developer's working on some improvements to that screen for 24/1.
That's good because we have jobs that have hundreds of serial numbers and it's impossible to just type them all in.
Well, serial matching is another one that's just not fun when you have lots of serial numbers. And so we're working on some, just trying to figure out what's the best way to present data and allow you to select data. It's hard.
Is there an ideas number by chance, Tim, that people can add their comments onto for this?
I do not. There probably is. That probably was why we jumped on it. Let me see if I can find it.
So we have a couple clients when they receive batteries, each battery has its own serial number, but they receive them in batches of 2,500. And they have to scan them in one at a time. So instead, we have the vendor sending us a text file, and we just load that in.
There are 45 ideas out there for serial numbers. So some of them got moved to bugs, some of them expired. But yeah, just search for serial number and you'll find stuff you can vote for.
And I'm working on getting Hannah's input out to everybody. Hold on just a second. There's that sysconfig file change that Hannah had mentioned, and a link on Epi users on how to use that.
Thank you.
Okay, our next submission is back again from Kazoo. The upgrade to Kinetic happening, both Classic and been told Metro View are being phased out, or just the Classic style? Are both going away, Tim?
So I can answer this question. So what the details on this are, when you log in from a smart client, the first thing that's presented to you after your name and password is which style do you want to run? And you can run in the Classic style, the Metro or Modern, depending on who you're talking to, and then Kinetic. The first two are the oldest two, and they are going away. So you will no longer have access to the Classic menu or the Metro menu. You will only get the Kinetic menu and the Kinetic page, because that is the one that is web friendly. The other two are not. Metro was, sorry to say, Metro or Modern, unfortunate naming on that. You know, Modern is only Modern today, and then tomorrow it's not. It was designed as kind of a prototype for, hey, here's what we could do to make this better. But in the long run, we had to make it web friendly, and that's what the Kinetic menu is, and the whole Kinetic page. So I would stop using that. In fact, I talked to somebody at Insights this last spring who said, yeah, we're getting ready to convert everybody over to the Metro menu. And go, no, stop. Don't convert anybody new to that. Convert everybody new to the Kinetic version. You know, and that's what's going to be, that's what is web friendly. That's what shows up in the browser.
Awesome, Kazu. There you go. So the bell bottoms are out, and we use the new one.
Yep.
Jay Norton online this morning submitted. Anyone else run into a problem with Epicor checks having a $ as a suffix after the numbers, such as 10.00 $, and can this be adjusted? Yes, you can adjust this. There is just simply right-clicking on the dollar field on your check SSRS form and telling it to put the $ on the other side. I think that's one of the easiest ways to do it, is just modify the SSRS form template.
I believe by default that has to do with your culture on your computer. So if you are like a Spanish-speaking country or some other country where the $ is at the end, SSRS will put it at the end. So it's a culture specific setting. So if your computer is set up that way, it's probably why it's doing it.
It's just like if you run Kinetic in different languages and you look at date fields, the date fields will be month, day, year, month, day, or whatever. There's different variations, and that's all based on culture.
So maybe your server culture is set up funny because the SSRS gets rendered server side. So I wonder if the server culture in your SQL box is set up with a Latin American culture of some sort. You can force it fixed like Calvin suggested, but if it's behaving naturally with your culture, that the easiest fix is to adjust that in your server side.
Awesome. Our next one here is Jackie Glumsky, online today, submitted. They have an RMA job with return parts disposition back to that job, which is normal. The parts are shipped on a miscellaneous packer created after the RMA job was closed. After capturing costs on the costs on the job will not a clear WIP. There's an MFG SRV transaction was simply hanging out there. We have not contacted Epicare yet. Thought I would ask here. I'm not familiar. If you ship an RMA product from an RMA job, but a miscellaneous packer is not going to affect inventory. It's not going to create a stock transaction. That's what you need to get the item out of your house.
And miscellaneous shipment is literally that. It's a miscellaneous shipment. You're moving something from one place to another. It doesn't know it left the building.
Yeah, it's just paperwork generator. It's not an inventory-based transaction, so it's never going to tell the job, hey, the material's moved out of WIP.
Yeah, you need to finish that job out, receive it, close it, something to clear that WIP.
Well, I think that what they're saying is that the WIP had value, and therefore the job still has value when you close it, and that becomes an adjustment at that point. If when you close it, maybe they didn't want to see the value still sitting.
Jackie, you're unmuted if you want to join in here. They're in 10.2.4. It automatically creates the packer, is what Jackie says.
I made this position to a job. I'm also confused by the MFG SRV because that's service. That's like almost like service call, it seems. That's really weird.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how that would end up in a service call type of situation. You're not doing like a service call RMA or anything like that, right?
She doesn't have a mic, so. Yeah. She says no.
Seems to me like she has stumped the chumps.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if the MFD serve is a separate issue from the RMA job with that the one transaction is probably separate from the other. But like you said, you have to finish that shipping. It went out on mispacker. It really needs to go truly cleared. Then that should clear up the WIP. The MFG serve is probably something else. Jackie, let me know if that doesn't help you out. I know you're typing here instead of speaking, but. Okay, let's, from Tim, we've got, is the product group on the RMA job related to a service called GL account? That could possibly call it. And Jackie said, when an RMA job is closed, it automatically creates the mispacker. Oh, so gotcha. So there wasn't a way to get it shipped out regularly. So Tim's suggestion, not Tim Shoemaker, sorry, another Tim, was to look and see if the product group on the RMA job might be related to the service call, and that might have created that transaction for you. No service call,
Yeah,
customer just returned the material to be fixed.
Yeah, I think you stumped the chump. I don't know.
You might have won, Jackie. You get the prize.
The winner. I didn't know it was a competition, but yeah.
Yeah, it should not be going in as a service job, though. Even if you have material getting dispositioned when it comes into the inspection queue, it's going to be dispositioned off to a rework job. The rework job shouldn't turn around and have a miscellaneous packer just to close the job. With the RMA, you would probably have a replacement sales order, even if it's a no-charge order for the item, and then just ship it out on that once it comes off of the rework job. But it should
you're
never
shipping the
be a
parts-
manufacturing to service transaction.
We may have to just continue on.
Okay.
Because I don't think we've got an answer for this one, Jackie. You might be better off contacting Epicare and seeing if they can help you through that.
Okay, our next one here is from Rick Turrentine, today online. What are some ways to troubleshoot BAQ timeout errors? It's got a BAQ that gives him the data, but it will take over 60 seconds to run. He knows he's doing something wrong. How can you tell what's affecting the performance? Who wants to jump on this one? Take that action.
So can I say this? Don't do it in production, because that's bad. Number one.
In my experience, when I run into BAQs that are taking a long time to execute, it's generally the way I've got the SQL set up. You know, if you're using table filters instead of subquery criteria, that can sometimes the query pulls in all the data, but then filters it afterwards, and that can make it take longer. But it's pretty specific to your individual queries. So I would suggest grabbing somebody who's really good at SQL and having them take a look at it. That's what I do anyway.
One way you can do that, Rick, that I've used in the past is if your query's got multiple things going on in it, whether it's multiple joins or you've got multiple subqueries. For one, typically if you're doing multiple subqueries, try to use CTEs as much as possible, especially if you reuse them. The CTEs get queried once, whereas if you've got them as subqueries, they'll actually get used multiple times or get run multiple times. So that will slow you down. But go down to the lowest level, your lowest subquery, find out how long that one takes. Just make a whole new BAQ, start with that guy. Is that one running fast? Then go to the next onion layer up. How long does that one take? Is it still fast? Keep going up until you find out what is it that's causing it to slow down. Then on that layer that caused it to slow down, see if you can figure out what table that you're doing is causing it to slow down. And then that brings in what Kevin was saying. Are you doing a table criteria? Are you possibly doing a filter that's not on an index that Epicor has? Because that will also slow things down. If you can take advantage of the indexes that Epicor has, your queries are going to be faster than if you, for example, like on UD tables, if you're not using the keys for the filter, if you're querying against date 06 or something, those are going to be slower than if you can use those key fields. That's typically how I do it, is figure out what part of the query, which level of the subquery is causing you to slow down. Once you find that, figure out what part of that layer is causing the slowdown. It's a very slow and tedious process, but then you can figure out what is causing it to do that. And then you can figure out, once you know what it is, then you got to come up with how to attack it. And depending on what it is, there's different ways for how to attack it.
And
To
sometimes it's
piggyback,
just SQL maintenance too. Like if you're, are you on prem or on the cloud? Do we? I guess we don't know. If you're a SaaS, you're
Rick's
okay. But if
on-prem.
you're Rick's on prem, Rick, make sure you're doing your maintenance. That's something that I run across all the time. You know, you gotta reindex, you gotta update statistics. Nothing will hurt your queries more than that. And lastly, something that constantly bites us is parameter sniffing problems. And you can Google what that is, but basically what it means is that the SQL gets, if you run the same query over and over again in SQL, it starts to think that it's smart and it catches on and says, you know, you seem to run this query always with these parameters. So it caches a plan with a very preset number of parameters in it. And so when you run that query again, if you pass different parameters, if you give it different where clauses, for example, it will execute with the plan for the other parameters, and it will be incredibly slow. Epicor recently, if you're in a recent version of 2023 plus, or maybe at the end of 2022, I can't remember, maybe the team remembers, but Epicor added a query option execution to BAQs, which allows you to basically request a clean plan by using a option recompile or option optimize for unknown. And 9 out of 10 times when I have a query that's misbehaving, particularly if it misbehaves sporadically, adding a query option of optimize for unknown or recompile just gets the gremlins out of the system and makes it run much faster. If you're not in 2023 or 2022, you don't have that option built in. There are a couple of walkthroughs on how to do it in the older versions. It requires you to do a little bit of clever engineering with your BAQs, but it is definitely possible.
And something that I think it was Fred, you recommended going through and test each one of your subqueries. In the latest version of the BAQ program, the one that's browser-based, when you go into run query, you actually have the option to test subqueries independently without tearing apart your BAQ. It's one of those nice little features that was added that we didn't really make a big deal out of, but it works really cool. When you go to the run query, and up at the top, you'll see a place where there's a combo box that lists all your subqueries, and you can choose one of the subqueries and press test, and it runs just that subquery by itself.
Awesome.
So that's something that can help. I think that this is all dependent on versions, and Jose already said it in a way. Depending on which version, you may have different results. I know that there's a series back in ERP 10 that if you joined, and it was very table dependent. If you join the order table to the part table and something else and the customer table, that's what it was, the customer, and it automatically joins it using the company record for some, the company fields, like it should. Okay, I'm not saying it shouldn't, but when it did that, for some reason, it was really slow. And you could go in and you could break how it normally joined, delete the join on company, but then add in a filter that says company equals XYZ on both tables, and your query would go faster. I believe we've fixed that now, but you could basically, anytime you joined anything to the customer record, you had to get rid of that company join. And everybody in development said that shouldn't matter, but it did, and I proved it to them. And so just be aware that there are some tricks that can be done to make things go faster.
And Tanner also suggested, you should have remembered this one, I presented on it. You can go under the query and get the execution plan as well. And that will also tell you what area is actually taking up the most time, whether it's a join or a select or something like that. So you could use that to start with as well. Thanks, Tanner.
And
all right,
just admitted it was a problem with his CTE query. Awesome. Next one is back to Susan Rule from Lakeshore. Custom layer for case entry and wants to display the product group description on the part of the case, HD case part number in the text box. Added a data view for the part linked to the HD case and put the part number, prod code description in the epi binding of the text box. Add an event with a hook after and target. Part get by it works when the HDK's part number is part number in the part table, but throws an error when the HDK parse is part on the fly.
I think I actually figured out a way to fix this, but it just loads really slow. In the REST services call options, there's a checkbox called suppress exceptions. And when I check that, I don't get the error and it loads the page, but it just takes forever if the part
I would
is
switch.
apply.
I would switch my call to get rows. Get by ID has always had this, what I consider a problem. I don't think Epic considers it a problem, but get by ID, when the part does not exist, instead of returning false, it actually throws an exception. It's a standard business object on any business object in Epic, or if you do a get by ID on a non-existing object, it throws an exception, and you cannot get around it. It will throw an actual .NET exception. And that's what you're seeing there. So when your event is calling the get by ID on part, that part is on the fly, it doesn't exist. The business object is throwing server side an exception that is getting sent through to the client. The only way around that is to either check if the part exists first. You can do that via VAQ or some other method. But the easiest thing to do is switch your call to a get rows. So if you switch your get by ID call on part that get by ID, you switch part that get rows and pass in your filter with a part number. Get rows will just return a blank array, a blank data set if it can't find one.
Okay, awesome. I'll try that. Thank you.
Follow up on that. If it does return a blank data set, you can do a condition after that does percent your data view name dot has row percent, and that will actually check the data view for data.
Okay.
Put that in the chat.
Thanks.
So our next one here is Kazu again. And this was to Kevin. So, hey, Kevin. Do you guys ever sell anything that's simply considered standard?
Yeah, we sell shoes to go along with the braces. We have a couple of what we call off-the-shelf knee braces, a few other products that we're mostly a distributor for. And those are standard, added as a part if they are, just off the shelf and shipped. We do have some options, like in our product configurator, we're entering a bunch of measurements of the foot anyway. Sometimes the customer will send us, 2 pairs of shoes for this order. And since we have those measurements, there's an option of you click a button in the configurator, and in the document rules, it will add the proper size of the shoes you select when you do it. But yeah, we do have some standard. It's just a very small part of our revenue. So.
Awesome. Are those shoes configurable, or those are standard DB parts?
No, there's maybe 10 different colors and 13 sizes for each, and there's a part for each one. We do have some make to stock jobs where I had them in a configurator for a while, but there ended up only being 32 part numbers if you separated out every option. So those are just dropped in normally. I do have a custom form that lets you enter, a job for, hey, make 10 of these or make one of each size of this color or something like that. But we do have some standard, yeah.
How come Kevin gets the easy questions?
You guys are getting asked about business layer exceptions.
Sorry. And Russ from online has a question. Auto receive an inventory is set on the last operation. The lot number defaults to the job number. Like to override this one for one part class and set it to the date. Would someone know if they can do this through a method or data direct? And if so, what business object or table would they be looking for?
We literally just solved this. It was a nightmare. I'm trying to look at the data directive. We use a data directive, and we literally just created the same. We had the same problem. We need a new lot to be created for every auto receipt. and instead it was defaulting to the job number. There is actually a checkbox in company that says default to the job number. We unchecked that box hoping that that would do it. That did not do it. But thankfully, Epicor actually sets in a context flag in the transaction that lets you know that this particular transaction is coming from an auto-receiving job offer. And so then you can basically hang on to that, and in a Partran data directive, create a new lot with whatever properties you want. I'll send the code snippet to Fred and he can share it, but this is an example. This is what we're doing. We're basically spinning up a new lot number for that part and attaching it to the receipt. But you can do something else if you like with the same concept.
So,
Got that out
next one. Sorry, Fred?
No, I put that out, Jose's snippets in the chat there for everybody.
Okay.
And that's in a Intran data directive, sorry. Intran data directive in Partran.
Okay, Matt had a question today online. Any suggestions for integrating nesting software like SigmaNest with Epicor? SigmaNest can definitely be integrated. I think SigmaNest still uses the 4 files, the SN81, 84, 86, and 87, to send the transactions back and forth, or at least save it after the transaction's reported in SigmaNest. Those can be pulled in and monitored with a directory watcher, and then just loaded using the business objects or a function call. So back in the past, we used a business activity manager. So when the file would show up, we loaded it in. When a job would be released, we would export out the SigmaNest routing information and product info.
We may
So
have a customer that's done this with Automation Studio as well. I believe I've seen somebody talking about that.
Yep, and then there's also NestLink from QBuild, I think. Does that work with SigmaNest, or is that for a different one?
I don't know.
I think QBuild also has a tool for integrating with SigmaNest that they call NestLink. They're still an Epicor partner, aren't they, Tim?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let me take a look. Our next one here is also from Kazu for customers being inactive. How would that be browser only based if the value isn't stored in the database, or is it just only available out of the box in the browser version?
So that there is a field that is only available in the browser. Of course, the field is in the database, and you could go and add it into your customer entry program, and then you would have it too. But the point is that you will have to modify your program to use the functionality at that point. I can also tell you a way to work around the MRP thing. The MRP speed thing is only available if you run MRP from a browser version of the MRP launch program. But it's a sticky flag, which means that if you turn it on, it stays on. You turn it off, it stays off. So if you go in and run it once with it on, then it will be on no matter how you launch MRP.
Got it. And I saw online Tim Nightingale confirm that SigmaNest and QBuild NestLink do work together. Thanks, Tim. Okay, our next question is from Patty. By the way, she loves the Explorer, Tim. She made sure that we pass that on to you. Will the Explorer be available for projects?
So we are adding on new functionality for Explorer, but not in 24.1. We did not get anything new. We want to create an Explorer for jobs. We're still trying to figure out what that looks like, because if you think about the way the Explorer views have been, all the Explorer views you've seen is basically a straight line going across. You have a quote that turns into an order, that turns into an invoice, that turns into a shipment, invoice, and then payment. But when you start talking about jobs, it's not a straight line. jobs go into jobs, jobs have demands, jobs have supply, jobs have materials, jobs have operations, they have transactions. It's more of a hub and spoke concept rather than a straight line pass through. So we're trying to figure out what that looks like for jobs, and projects would be the same thing. Is, you know, what would you click on and what would it show when you are in a project? And so if anybody has a great graphic view of what they would like that Explorer to look like from a project, advertise Epicor Ideas again. We're looking for ideas on how that could be best, or how customers would best like to see jobs, projects. We already have a view of doing lot numbers and serial tracking using the Explorer. So just any of those types of things. We're looking for ideas on the best way to display the information.
Three-dimensional spirograph view.
Yeah, well, that's the problem, is it starts turning into three-dimensional when you start getting into that. It's not a nice little graphic line that goes across with boxes. How do you show it?
So, okay, our next one here is from Yossi. And I don't know if Yossi was still on. He logged off earlier. Don't know if he made it back on the meeting. Mentioned that in 24.1, time phase inquiry will allow for parameters to be changed directly in the app, and MRP reran. Will there be a separate version for users who don't have the permission to make such changes?
No, but it will follow security. So we have some security provisions in there so that it will make sure that you're allowed to do it. And I don't know exactly how we're doing that yet, but that was one of the criteria that we said, you know, we had to make sure that you were allowed to edit part data before you could go change that data. So yes, we're considering that, but it won't take a separate version of the program. It's just going to be handled through security.
Got it. So it's just going to follow up a core security protocol.
Yeah. And it might be that we created a security group. We had several ideas that were put out there. One might be that you have a security group that says can edit parameters in time phase, and if that's turned on, you're allowed to do it. And if it's not, you know, so we're still, the story is not complete yet on time phase. The answer though is that typical, and I'm not saying everyone, but typically you go into a company, the people that run time phase also are active doing things. There are some people that you don't want to change parameters, and that's why we're considering security.
Awesome. Next one is from Carl, also online today. Will the quote to cash Explorer show manufacturing jobs in a future release?
Again, that gets into that job, you know, what I was just describing with the Explorer. Right now, the quote to cash does not show jobs at all. It goes from quote to sales order to shipping. That Job Explorer, one of the things that Job Explorer would probably do if we get there is have the job, being able to look at a job and see that the job came from a sales order, which came from a quote. But again, it's trying to get that imagery correct, and so that it makes sense to people. It might be that we have multiple Job Explorers, one that shows supply and demand, and one that shows materials and operations and labor transactions, and you know, there's just so many. You've got job parts, you've got batch jobs that people might want to explore. You've also got MRP pegging and things like that people could want to explore. It starts getting really complicated when you start getting it to that level.
Awesome. There you go, Carl. Next one from Mike online today. Any plans to make Kinetic UD UX like Classic?
To make it user I don't understand what the question.
Mike, are you out there?
He's not.
Okay, not going to get too far there. I'm wondering if he's just looking to make the user experience in Kinetic look more like the classic screen.
No, it's not going to look more like Classic because it's a web browser.
Yep.
And web browsers we don't have the same abilities. That's one of the reasons why when you look at the web page version, the screen dynamically allocates size. You can scale it. It will change the number of columns based on the size of your screen. So the whole concept is that you can run it from an iPhone if you want. Not very well. Don't try to enter an order on an iPhone, but you can do it. I proved it. Or a tablet or a large screen monitor.
So our next one is from Troy. Can you create a custom link to a UD record that show up in Explorer? We had to revert back to MES Classic because Kinetic didn't allow it.
I think that might be referring to something else.
Yeah, that's not the that's not the Epicor Explorer that we're talking about. That's something else. A UD record, you should be able to link anything with a UD record. Is this in a dashboard?
Is Troy still out there, Fred?
No, he's not. I'm going to see if I can find.
It says we had to revert back to MES Classic. I think maybe he's trying to customize the MES, the Kinetic MES.
Right before that was when he was talking about having a case go to a problem, which you addressed, Tim. So the case is connected to a problem. We had to revert back to MES Classic because of this. Let me see if I can figure out a different way. Yeah. I don't think those two things are related there. I think they got jumbled together. Sorry. And since Troy's not online, we can't ask him a better item for that. So let's go ahead and move on from there.
I don't know. We have customers that I talked to one customer at Insights last year that when they said that they moved to the Kinetic version of the MES screens, they really, really liked them. There was a problem with one of the screens they had to get fixed early on, but they really like them. They like the fact that they can run from a browser. They don't have to upload a client to every one of their computers that's out on the floor. They run everything from the browser now.
Okay, let's move on to the next question there.
Okay.
All right, so we do have some other items in the questions window. Did you want to
try to get there? Hold your horses.
I'll just give it back to Fred. It sounds like he's already there.
Okay, Kevin, he's having an issue with matching order number from BAQ to data in a populated grid in Application Studio.
Is that to me or is...
I'm going to say this is probably Jose or Hannah.
What was the question again?
The question is, have you encountered other issues where, so he's trying to match an order number from a BAQ to data in a populated data grid in App Studio. Have you encountered other issues where this becomes an issue? I've been able to use this row ID in certain instances, but cannot match by field like order number or SUG num, suggestion number. So he's trying to match an item from a BAQ to other information in App Studio.
What's the specific issue you're getting? I haven't encountered that problem, or any problem rather.
Kevin, I got you unmuted if you want to join in on that.
So specifically, I am working on a customization that's going to allow us to do dual sourcing. So I was pulling, I created a BAQ that grabs all the PO suggestions from the suggestions table, keeps them in by their suggested number. I'm trying to match it back to the suggestions in, or to the grid view in Application Studio so I can add new fields. But when I attempted to actually do so by suggestion number, I was unable to update any rows. When I added the sysrow ID and matched on sysrow ID, I was actually able to get those suggestions to populate and update in that grid. But using the suggestion number wouldn't let me actually connect the two records. I'd get no matches.
I assume the suggestion numbers in both data views, just asking the dumb question.
Yes.
It's entirely possible they could be different data types for whatever ungodly reason.
I was going to suggest that if you can match on a sysrow ID, it does join those GWIDs as strings in most cases. And so is it possible your order number is, when you're getting it from the BAQ, is a string, but you're trying to match it to the order number in Application Studio where it's an integer?
I checked my data types, and the grid data type on both of them, I believe, if I recall correctly, were both marked as strings and not integers.
I think you're muted, Tim.
So one thing I've done starting 3 or 4 years ago was I started putting the sysrow ID as a hidden field in a lot of my queries before I brought them into dashboards, because that way you don't have to match company and order number and order detail. You just match the sysrow ID, and it made my matching faster and easier. I just hid this data from the customer, but made my equates easier.
That works in instances where the sysrow ID is present. I am doing another customization where I'm customizing the work queue in the data collection, where I want to add a custom field to that grid view. And unfortunately, in that grid view, there isn't a sysrow ID for those records. There is also not one. There's not a sysrow ID for the order tracker in customer entry, which is another instance where I'm trying to add additional information to a data grid view in Kinetic.
How are you doing the comparison?
Go ahead.
How are you doing the comparison?
So basically, I am. So I'm fetching my data table, bringing it in, doing a checking whether or not I'm undefined. I move it to matches. I compare. I'm basically looking for that instance, customer number equals customer number based on the two different fields. Sorry, my phone's going off with an emergency alert.
Just trying to visualize this. So you're doing a comparison in the data view condition. Have you tried wrapping it in single quotes, even though it's an integer? That would kind of force it to be strings on both ends to rule out the possibility of different data types.
I could definitely try that. I might also try breaking it out and make it. I haven't used a lot of JavaScript, so I'm kind of learning that, as well as other things while we're working towards Application Studio. So
The data view condition widget is kind of a bear. It might be a good idea as a test to like make two just text boxes or numbers or whatever your data is, and like click a button to compare the actual rows without having to loop through everything. That way you can tell like if the data is actually comparing correctly, and you can rule out any issue with the data view condition setup.
okay, could you repeat that again? I didn't quite follow that.
So the data view condition widget is complex. To rule out issues with that, I would add two text boxes to your screen and locate the row that you know matches on both sides. Click a button and have an event that just compares the two and shoots up a message box or something that says true or false. That way you can kind of rule out any issues with the event you're working in.
Okay, I got you. So basically put my hidden grid actually in a grid, select the two options, do a comparison, and check for validity.
Right, right.
Okay, thank you. Definitely give that a shot.
Okay, Kevin,
Have you
don't go
noticed
too
if
far.
it's only with? Go ahead. Sorry.
Nope, go ahead, Jose. I was moving on
I
to
was
the
gonna
next
say,
question.
it seems to be that it's only related to non-strings, to like integers and stuff like that, like Hannah said. So that's likely more likely than not, that's the issue, is the data type. So I think that would be the best bet. I was also going to say in JavaScript, if you put a plus sign in front of the field, it turns it into an integer, even if it's a string. So when you're doing your comparison setup, if you do plus field equals to plus other field, it will make both sides of the equation be integers. And it's JavaScript, so even if they're not numbers, it'll just make them numbers anyways.
Okay.
Kevin, before you run away, Kevin, are dashboards going away in favor of Application Studio?
And if they're not going away, can we expect a kinetic dashboard tool?
There is a kinetic dashboard tool. It's called Application Studio.
Okay, so there
you
specifically
can create dashboards with App Studio. Yes.
Okay, so but there's not going to be the automated tool where I can just throw a couple of things together, hit a quick button, and have it generate.
Yeah, there is. You go into the wizard and you can tell it to generate a dashboard with the wizard.
Okay. Thank you.
You go into you say you want a new application, and you go into the wizard and it asks you questions, and it asks you which DAQ you want to display, and it builds it up, and you can add more. You can add multiple BAQs with that tool, and it's all part of the wizard that is in App Studio, and it creates a new application. It's not called a dashboard. It's a new application, and then you can customize that application to do what you want it to do. But it starts off as a dashboard. It doesn't look identical to the old dashboard. So.
Hey, our next one is from Elise here. That was loud. Has anyone had an issue with payables checks randomly creating duplicate entries? They've had it happen a couple times. The only reason I would think that it's doing multiple checks for a vendor is it the same dollar amount, at least?
Elise, you're unmuted if you want to join in.
I think I stand pretty strong on this, that if you ever find some time when it does that would be considered a drop dead priority 1 bug. Okay, you turn it in and tell them this needs to be fixed. It is printing 2 checks out for the same invoice.
The only time that I've seen it do that though, Tim, is if you have the number of lines per check set at like 10 and you're paying 15 invoices, it does print a second check for the second stub.
Correct.
Would that look like a duplicate check to someone?
It should be voiding the first one because it prints it out.
I can chime in. We actually, Epicare support helped us with a fix for the first one, but unless it's a user error that we can't quite pinpoint, we're relatively new to Epicor. It's happening to different vendors in the middle of check runs, and it's not for the same amount.
Does it have multiple lines? Are you paying multiple invoices with that check, or is it just one, or less
Yes,
than?
multiple invoices with one check.
So is it because it's rolling over and it had to print a second check stub that is doing it?
I don't think so, because it will happen. It will happen to like 5 entries.
Okay.
And they just get duplicated, and it could be in the middle. You know, they could be one after the other, or randomly. You know, the first and the 5th.
We have thousands of customers, and if this is a regular occurrence, and we would have, one of those rebellions on our hands. There's something going on your system.
Okay.
I'm not blaming the user. I'm letting you know there's something wrong, and you need to get support on that thing right away.
Yeah, I have a meeting with support tomorrow.
Okay.
Try to duplicate it in pilot, but it's happened. Yeah. Now it's happened twice to 4 different vendors.
Yep, we need to solve that, obviously.
Okay.
Something you might want to check, Elise. Are you on premise or are you in the cloud?
Oh, we're cloud.
Your cloud? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You might want to track when it does happen. Note the specific time that it does happen, because with the way that SQL backups run, I'm not sure with the cloud, but maybe they would be able to restore to right before that happens. Okay. Meaning Epicor support could restore to a local version that they have access to before that you run the checks. And that might give them the ability to duplicate the issue. If you can go, I printed checks at 11:24 and it duplicated this one, they might be able to go back. I don't know if they have that capability or not.
Okay. That sounds like a plan. Thank you.
Awesome. Next one here, Lee submitted, just for information, they use Microsoft Edge to turn Epicor browser into a web app to launch from the start menu. But the warning is they're running out of memory.
Yeah, and that could be, a system with 32 gigabytes of memory. So what happens is I'll launch Epicor in the web app, and after a few minutes, it'll start. My fan on the laptop will go really fast, and then when I go back into the Epicor instance, it'll show a out of memory issue. And I noticed that with the when I either it's Google or whether it's Edge, if I turn that web page into a web app, that's when that happens. So I didn't know if anybody else tried that or not, but I did turn that into Epicor, and they wanted me to go through all these kinds of tests to prove it out to them. And I just closed the ticket and said, nah, if other people are having problems, let them be the guinea pig and to work this out. So.
Well, I tried it back, this was probably 2 years ago. I saw that and I tried it, and it did some odd things to me. I don't know that I did that. And when I approached development, the development team said, ooh, no, we never tried that. We've never QA'd it. We do not know if it works. We designed this to run from Google Chrome, and so go into Chrome and set a favorite and run it there, because we did not design it to, for example, when you're in one app, when you're running the menu and then you run another application, we typically open another tab in Chrome. But I think what I was experiencing was when you tried it from a web app, it didn't open it as a tab. It did something else funny, and it wasn't designed to do that. And I don't know if it'd work with the pub sub feature that we have. That is designed to run across multiple tabs, and if there are multiple apps, I don't think it would work.
Yeah, that's why I'm recommending to all the users that are going to switch to browser version to just run it, like you say, from the favorites, not mess with web apps or anything fancy. Just run it right out of the box, right out of the browser, and it actually runs really fast and as intended.
Well, and also you can set favorites inside of Chrome or Edge. You can have a favorite that goes directly to customer order entry. You don't have to go to the menu. So if you go in and go into order entry and then save that as a favorite, then next time you come in and say, yeah, run order entry. If you're not logged in, it will ask you to log in and takes you to order entry. Or if you're already logged in, it just takes you straight to order entry.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So yeah, I'm going to train my users to do that, put those in their favorites so they can get directly to the app. That's a good idea.
Real quick,
Way,
just to
you can also do tab grouping so that you can open up 5 windows every time you log in. So I want customer open, I want part open, I want your favorite areas, and just make that be your tab group that auto opens into Epicor.
If you have a folder that has a bunch of apps that you normally open, like order entry, customer entry, part entry, you put those all in a folder. When you right click on that folder and say open with, there's an option that says open all, and it'll open all 5 tabs at once.
Is that on Chrome or is that on both Chrome and Edge?
I think they both have
that.
Yeah.
Real quick, just to piggyback on that, they all have all the browsers, at least the Chromium-based ones like Chrome and Edge, all have different profiles that you can have. So if you can open a window in a profile, so it wouldn't be cluttered with any other favorites you might have or tab groups you might have already saved related to other things. If you switch to a profile, it'll be one browser window with its own tabs, and it'll have the favorites associated with that profile. And one more thing, I just set up Epi users as a web app, and it was using a solid 10 gigs of memory. So I think Edge just might not be optimized for those web apps.
Maybe so. But that's a good idea. I like that profiles, because a lot of my users have about 30 tabs open, trying to look up suppliers or
exactly. You don't want to get it all mixed up with all the other stuff, all the other websites that they need to use throughout the day.
Yeah. Plus, some have. Go ahead.
There's another cool feature inside of Chrome that you can use, that when you right click on an app in your favorite, it says to open it in a, no, that's not where it is. How do you do it? You can open it in a group or move it to a group.
Yeah, they call them tab groups, and then you just open the whole group. It opens everything in it.
Yeah, and there's actually an app that I use, and if you look at my demo that I was doing earlier, it said 2023.2 in orange up at the top. I created a new tab group, and there's a way to tell it that these websites automatically get launched into that tab group, even if you open it manually. So that's what I've done, so that I can tell when I'm running 2023.2 or 24.1, it automatically categorizes that, and then you can collapse that whole tab group and make it disappear.
So the tab group would have a name, and then that name would show up on the top.
Yes.
Right. Yep.
Exactly. So you could have one tab group for your production environment and one tab group for your pilot environment, and that way you can tell which one you're in.
I like that.
I mean, use all the features that are available in the browser. I mean, the browser does have a lot of cool features, including all these tab groups, and including, you can go into dark mode if you want, because people sometimes like dark mode on their screens. Well, that's a Chrome feature. That's not that you can add on.
The only thing I would say with tab groups and using with storing the browser favorites is it is going to store your password. If your users are not locking their workstation, someone can open Chrome and now they're automatically in Epicor.
You're right.
That is a potential security flaw. So you got to make sure your users aren't leaving their machines wide open for other people.
They can do that on the local clients too. We get that all the time.
Yeah, if you're leaving your machine open, then that's the security problem. It's not the fact that Chrome logs it in for you. But also Chrome has the ability to use, and we use LastPass at Epicor. And with LastPass, if you're not logged in, it will automatically fill in your login and password, which is fine as long as you keep your computer secured and logged in.
LastPass? Run, Tim, run!
I know, like LastPass was hacked a couple times. That's not a wise place to be, Tim.
It's been hacked a couple times, and they've also fixed it.
They just got their entire database owned not long ago. Whew.
Yep, they fixed it.
Okay, our next one here. Tim, what's the gap between time of a release such as 23.1 when it becomes available for cloud and Resources Cloud get early access to beta version? Are there any resources for cloud customers?
Well, cloud customers get it in pilot before on-prem customers get access to it, unless they're part of the controlled release. If you're part of the controlled release group, then you get it, let's see, what is it, Jose? You got it back in
4
August?
weeks, I think.
4 weeks,
Yeah.
5 weeks?
4 to 6 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, so you get it early. Then it typically goes GA, and then it goes live in production in the cloud about the same time, within a week. And it's not necessarily before or after, but it's scheduled. On-prem, if you can download the GA version once it comes out, but that's typically after pilot has, the cloud has already gotten pilot upgraded. I don't know if I answered your question. The answer really is, once controlled release is done, then we also, sometime right in there, we load the controlled release version into the cloud for the cloud to start doing their pilots. And multiple weeks after that, then we typically roll that into production after they've done their tests. Like I said earlier today, we got to the point where we realized that that was not going to be a good solution for us. That was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I don't remember. And we basically deferred the whole upgrade until December 9th for the cloud. But they still have pilot.
And our next question here. Can the current company image be displayed on active homepage? Is there a plan to support theming in active homepage? If you put the image on the site, doesn't it pop up by default? If you go into site maintenance and then set the logo.
Are you talking about in a browser? Or are you talking about in the smart client?
Nick, are you out there?
Nick's unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's, like in the Metro version, basically the user are trying to get it to look kind of like that, but basically it shows you the image at the top of the Metro version when you add the company image in it. But in Kinetic, the only way you see it is if you use the, the help options or something, and it pops out to the side where you can change your company. You can see the image there, but they'd like to see it on the active homepage without having to slide out the panel.
So the answer
I tried telling them that they can see the company and the link in the corner and all the environment that they're in, but they're just looking for kind of what they see now in that Metro version.
The direct answer to your question about theming is yes, there are plans. We are working on theming options. It's not going to be available in 24.1, but soon, safe harbor statement, soon thereafter, probably before 24.2, theming will become available for Kinetic. That you'll be able to change the theme, change the colors that you want to work with, change icons, etc. And you can thank our other product, Prophet 21, for that, because Prophet 21 basically demanded that we have theming. And since these both use the same design surface, Prophet 21 has the design, they're building that design for theming into the core App Studio. Then once it comes out, we have some work to do in Kinetic to make it work. So that's why I said it'll be out about the time that the release comes out, but we haven't applied it yet to Kinetic. So it'll soon thereafter, we'll be applying theming. I haven't seen what it looks like yet, but it's coming soon.
That's awesome. If I can't have obnoxious themes in my dev environments, I don't know what I'd do with myself.
Well, again, I will point to the fact that you can create those groups, and that's how I've been doing this, is I create groups. Because I'm just like you, I'm sitting here going, okay, which environment am I in? Because I can run right now, I can go in and show you 24.1, and I need to know that that's what I'm in. Although there's one really obvious new thing that's in 24.1, and I can look at almost any screen and see it. So yeah, there was a hint, there's something really cool coming. But it's really kind of not fun if you're looking at a screen and go, why isn't this working? And then you realize that you're in the wrong version. So it's important. I understand it. I've been screaming for it for a while.
Okay, our next question from Jay Norton. IT staff is asking the SSRS report that's used for printing checks. AP check? Anyone have the direct path in SSRS? I know it's under AP check. I just don't know the RDL file name. I think it is the same as AP check.
I think it's apcheck.rdl, but
yeah,
I'll see if I can find it.
That's what I would guess. I would think it would be documented right in the report definitions, isn't it?
That would be the other one. Report styles would also show it and point it.
Report styles, it should show you. No, it's been so long since I've done reports. I couldn't answer the question. That isn't a cop-out answer. That's just the facts. I don't build reports anymore.
It's check print, CHK print, under process payments. The process payments folder, CHK print RDL. And if you get the remittances, reports payment remittance advice.
I'm thinking AP check is the RD.
Jose beat us all to it.
Report style.
Yeah, AP check is the report style, correct. I sent it in the chat.
There you go, Jay. Have fun with that. Okay, Elise, web browser does not automatically open Epicor downloads. You need to go to Notification Center Bell to open. Any ideas how to get this back to auto-opening documents?
Yes, there's something in Google Chrome that you have to do to tell it to do that. It's a Chromium thing, but I don't remember what it is.
I thought it was blocking attachments.
No, we've enabled pop-ups. We've tried everything.
I wish I had.
Checking for print preview specifically?
Yeah, like when we do print preview, it will download to the system viewer. And it's only specific to Kinetic. It's not specific to other websites.
So you might call tech support on this one. I believe they have a tech document on this to show you how to solve it. It's a security related issue. And it's the fact that browsers are not allowed to launch programs.
Oh, I remember somebody talking about that at Kinetic.
Yes. We are not allowed to unless you tell it that we are allowed to. And so that's part of the problem. And you have to do something with the rest, with the edge processor and something else. And then basically it's allowed to, but you have to. Okay,
so this is more of like our security issue versus Kinetic. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's internet security is what it is. It's the fact that because we're running in a browser, browsers are not allowed to launch Microsoft Excel. Okay, that's the rules.
Mm-hmm.
Because you wouldn't want it to be able to, because if somebody could launch Excel and do something for you, then that would be really bad. You know, so you have to tell it that Epicor is allowed to do this thing. Epicor is allowed to launch a PDF and run it.
Okay.
There you go, Elise. Chrome auto open after download. Here are the instructions for changing your settings to auto open.
Okay. I will try that too. Thank you, guys.
Ask Dr. Google how to use Google.
We've tried that, but I'm gonna keep trying. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a security related issue, and it's not Epicor that created the security rule. It's the internet. You know.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And we have to live by this magical rule because, well, it's what people found out through security problems that, hey, if you're able to launch Excel and upload a file up and launch Excel, you can run a virus on somebody's system. And no, you don't want to do that. So.
Okay. The fun out of it, Tim.
I know. It's no fun.
Okay, Kevin tried to do dark mode, but it didn't work.
Oh, there's a post on Epi Users about that, about how to make dark mode work.
Got it. There we go. Kevin helping Kevin.
I have an extension called dark mode, and it does work. If I remember right. I don't normally run it, so
that
I
might
don't
be
know.
what the Epi Users post has to do, is get the extension.
Yeah, there's one called dark mode.
Next one here. How do people get involved in the controlled release program?
You contact somebody in product management.
You're supposed to say you have to run around the circle, pat yourself on the head.
No. So controlled release, if you send an email to myself or the person that's going to be running the controlled release program is somebody named Jen Trifthauser, but you can send it to me and then I'll forward it to her. And basically get yourself put on the list. Obviously, we don't want that list to be thousands of people. So we want people that are really willing and they're really going to be testing, and then you get early access, like Jose and his team and several other companies that I know. So get access, but it does involve some fairly active work that you need to do to test, and weekly meeting. And Jose, can you want to expound on all the different things you had to do as part of controlled release?
Yeah, I mean, it just takes time, right? You have to install if you're not in the cloud, you have to install the release, get it up, get your database uplifted, which depending on how far you're going to jump, could be quite a bit of work. Usually Hannah does that for us. Poor Hannah. And then you gotta test all the new features and attend weekly meetings. So it is time consuming, but it can be a rewarding process to get access to the features early, so you can start training and giving heads up to your people, and also finding all the problems. So as long as you're willing to put in the time, it can be a rewarding process.
And we're ever improving that process too. I will say the last 2 times, I think we've gotten better and better at the controlled release and trying to limit the amount of useless information that you might get. Thank you, Jose, for suggesting some things. And this next release, we're changing the way we did demo days. Before, we did these large half-hour, 1-hour demo days that demonstrated multiple features all at once, and it was hard sometimes to find how did that one feature X work, and you can't find the demo date for it. So what we're doing this time is we're going to be releasing each feature as a feature preview. And so some of these demo days recordings, or really feature preview recordings, might be a 5-minute recording. Hey, we just released this feature of inspection at the part level. Here's how it works. And we show how it works, and then you're done. And so we're going to make it so that finding the new features and how they work is going to be a lot easier for you, because you can look and listen to the exact feature you're interested in testing.
And those are still shared through the Teams channel.
Yes, well, we're also looking at possibly changing the way we do that as well. It may be released through the education site in Epicor so that more than just controlled release customers can see it. It may be something that as we move forward, we may be releasing it to the world to see, well, the world in Epicor education. Because why keep it secret? You know, that's been my argument is why are we keeping something secret until the week before something goes live? Why not let people see it now?
The only thing I would question, Tim, is if you don't have an active education contract, can you still get into there? But you can be part of the beta because you're still a user. I don't know if that would work for everybody because not everybody's an education subscriber.
Good point.
George brings up a question. Did Tim address the sunsetting of DLLs?
That's the smart client, and I did not address it directly. But we are going to sunset it someday, but we are also, this is my standard speech. We are going to sunset it someday. We also have promised that we are going to give a 1-year announcement before we sunset it. And we have not made that announcement yet. So you know it's going to be at least 12 months. And we typically make those kinds of announcements at Insights. So you can pretty much guesstimate that it's going to be at least 1.5 years before we sunset it. And I can say through a safe harbor statement right now that we have no plans to announce that at Insights yet. So that may change, but right now we have no plans to announce it at Insights. So do your own math, figure it out. It's going to be at least, you know, based on that information, I figure, well, that means it's going to be 2 years from now is the soonest we would make that announcement, you know, that we would be deprecating the DLLs. But I don't anticipate, I would not hang my hat on that.
And I still got people running 6.1. They're not in any rush to go.
Well, if they're running on 6.1, they don't have, who cares? The DLLs,
Yeah,
they still have the
barely
DLLs.
have DLLs. They still got progress on the back end and the front end and the sideways.
The only ones that really have to be, you know, that it really are people that are trying to stay up to date. They need to, you know, they're going to need to update to the browser based to stay up to date.
Correct.
And then we have a,
make that announcement.
go ahead, Tim.
Once we make that announcement.
We do have a hand raised from Mike McWilliams. Mike, I unmuted you if you've got a question here. And the seance starts. Mike, can you join us from the great beyond? Make yourself known.
Unmute yourself. The most common phrase in the English language right now.
Epicor user group. Come on, please make yourself known. Talk to us. John Edwards here.
Okay. I'm going to say if we don't get an answer back from Mike here shortly, that is our last question. So while we wait for Mike, there will be a survey. I believe it may pop up at the end of the presentation here. You'll also get an email, I believe, tomorrow if you didn't fill it out when you leave the meeting here. Please do fill that out. We use the information to figure out topics for next year, or not next year, the next meeting, as well as
which is next
give
year.
feedback on what
next year.
Right.
Oh, yeah, okay. Hey, I'm the one that did the time zone wrong for the break, so you know. So please do fill those out. We do take them seriously. It does help not control, but influence where things are going for future presentations. And we still don't have a answer back from Mike, so if there's no more questions, we'll go ahead and conclude the meeting here. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Thank you to our panelists. Appreciate you all for taking time, not only for Stump the Chump, but doing all your presentations that you did. It's very appreciated. No, it takes a bit of time to put those together.
You're welcome.
Have a good holiday season, everybody, and we will see you for the next meeting.
Thank you, everybody.
Later.
Gobble till you wobble.